And hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Boost. Happy Tuesday for those that are here live. Happy every day, any day of the week. Whenever you're here, we appreciate you being here. We've been talking about this concept of influence, teaching others. The idea of parents and children are both literal and figurative. Speaking of parents, today's Boost is dedicated in the merit of Dan Ben Nachum, his 45th yahrzeit. He was an incredible individual, a father, a leader, a founder. He's actually one of the founding families of Hefter, the Five Towns community. May his soul have an aliyah, and may his family only know good things. Speaking about this concept of teaching parents, children, each other, and what we're doing really, I hope for those who've been with us for a little bit, is circling back to concepts that we've spent a lot of time on. And I hope that you're hearing these concepts, empathy, and seeing others for who they could be, and energy, right? These are all what's taking place when you're influencing somebody else. What's not taking place really is the stuff that we think is taking place. We assume that when it comes to influencing somebody, it's what we say, right? So the classic case of the kid who comes to his parent is like, I need your help. And they sit down, they give him advice, and that's really helpful. That's not what's changing the kid. And it seems like it is. And it seems like when you walk into a room and you sell someone on something, right? You got a client and you roll in, and what you're really doing is making a pitch. It seems like when you're walking into your boss, it seems like when you're walking into your employees, it seems like when you're talking to your friends. It seems that what's really happening is that we are just transferring information to each other. And to some extent, there is something that's happening. It's not like it's going nowhere. It's not like everyone's sort of like speaking in white noise to each other. But to say that when I talk to somebody else, that the words that I say in the words itself is what's making an impact, that's just not giving it the full picture. And if you're not giving it the full picture, you're not being able to make a huge difference in someone else's life. That's why we think that like certain people can talk. Now, there are people that study things and that have tools and wisdom, of course. But when we talk about regular influence, we assume that if I knew what to say, it would work. We assume that the people that can say it in a certain way, those are just the garments of something much deeper. How you say something is the articulation. And if you can almost imagine articulation as the physical manifestation of thought, what you think has to come out into the world. If you can almost picture this, I'm sort of getting this. So for those of you who are more into the sciences or science teachers, I'm sure you've either been teaching this or I remember this. Not clearly well, because for those of you who know my high school career, it wasn't exactly pristine. I remember at some point in high school, somewhere in some lab in school, the teacher teaching us what happens when you take molecules and they're vapor and you move them into a colder environment and they, I think, become liquid, and then it gets colder and becomes solids. For the teachers that are listening to this, you'll jump in with the actual way that the experiment is taught to children. But the idea that was being across is that the molecules that is found in a block of ice is the same as that which is to the most extent. I mean, I'm sure they're changed with their environment, but it's the same molecules. The environment has changed. Your brain has a certain amount of energy. Your brain, your mind, if you will, is the exchange. It's the crossroads between your body and your soul. Your thought is where it sort of gets blurry. If you look through some of the words, that some of the great Jewish thinkers of all time use for soul. They say nefesh hasichlas, which is the intelligent, the intellectual soul. What they're saying, my opinion is that what they're saying is that the place in which this exchange takes place, the exchange, if you will, is where you go from the particles to like liquid, where it starts to like one area where you shift and you start to congeal is from spirituality, which is divine energy, to thinking, which is some measure of contraction that takes place. And then there's a greater contraction when it comes out of your mouth. So if you could almost envision this, your words is, if we can go back to our old example of the nuclear generator and then the town generator and then the outlet in the house. Now picture that as if the nuclear generator is your soul, the town generator is your thoughts, and the outlet in the house is your mouth. So what your mouth really is doing is it's creating a garment around your thinking, which has created a garment around your spirituality. Now, when you see it that way, when you look over to somebody's outfit, this past week was Purim. Purim is a very deep holiday. Just as a general rule, whenever you see holidays that most people don't fully understand, they're the deepest. And Purim is a very deep holiday. And one of the deepest mysteries, if you will, of Purim is the idea of getting dressed up. It's not just like, hey, like, yeah, that's cool, let's get dressed up. It has symbolism. We're Jews. Are you joking me? We're Jews. Like you don't eat food without symbolism. We don't do anything without symbolism. There's nothing that we do that survived all these generations that isn't some level of there's some symbolic. I remember one time when I'm sure everyone has this. I'm sure everyone has this. In my house, during the period of time from Rosh Hashanah until Sukkot, we dip the challah in sugar. And kids are like, that's cool. I'm like, cool? That's not cool. My grandmother did it, and I sat down on her lap when I was younger, and she told me this stuff. Like, I don't just dip sugar. It doesn't make its way through our systems by just doing stuff. Somebody did it for some reason. We don't just get dressed up. We're learning a lesson. When you see someone in the room that's dressed up, you know what you realize? That the person in front of you is not what they're wearing. It's funny. It's humorous because now they look like somebody else, but you know it's not them. But how come when you see them every day, you judge them based on how they look? How can we judge people based on how they dress and the cars they drive and the degrees on their walls? Isn't that who they are? No, it's not who they are. What you wear on the outside in a home, car, outfit, title, office, that's not who you are. That's your garment. And if we don't understand that, it gets complicated. We don't know when to take off the hat of being a parent or being a friend and putting on the hat of being an employee or being an employer. But they're just hats. It's not us. We're not the things that we do. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an Indian chief. I practice law. Maybe it's easier for society to create a little hack and say I'm a doctor, but if I start believing that, then I got a big issue. I'm not anything that I do. That's a garment. And it takes a certain amount of glasses to look at the garment and go, that's not who you are. Garments are not the identity of the person wearing the garment. And if we don't pay attention, we forget that. Our words are not just words. It's not the manifestation of ourselves. It's a garment. The words that we say are just garments for our thoughts. That's why sometimes you ever have like that feeling? Do you ever feel like something like really deep and meaningful? A spiritual moment, and you're like, how was it? And you're like, amazing. And as you say amazing, you're like, no, it wasn't amazing. It was more. I don't know how to articulate this. You ever have that feeling? Where you go somewhere, or you have something, or you experience something, and someone's like, so? You're like, I can't put it into words. I can't put it into words how I feel about certain people. You think love is going to capture the feeling that people have? Do you think the children of Dan ben Nachum, 45 years after his passing, could put into words how they feel about him? No, there's no way. So we use words because what else are we going to do? But don't ever think for 1 second that the words that we use are the proper manifestations of the feelings that we have. And don't ever think for 1 second that the thoughts that we have is the proper manifestations of the soul that we are. And we know it because we felt it. If you've ever once experienced something that was beyond, that was metaphysical, you don't even have words to this. You don't even have thoughts to describe it. You don't have thoughts to describe certain feelings. Once we recognize that, we at least start to humble ourselves and humble this world to the real world, which is the world of the soul, which we're all a big part of. But why it's relevant this second and what we're talking about is I want to create a paradigm in what we're doing when we're influencing, when we're helping, when we're sharing. When I speak to somebody else, when you speak to somebody else, and you're trying to influence them, you're trying to share something with them, they need your help, or they don't need your help, but you want to share something with them, it's not the words you tell them that's going to make the difference. It's the intentionality of why you're telling it to them that's going to make the difference. See, what's happening is that a transfer is being made at multiple levels. When the kid needs advice, when the friend calls, when you see someone doing something that you think could be better, whenever it is that you're interacting with the world, as a teacher, as a student, as a parent, as a child, whatever it is that you're doing, when you walk into the room that we've built together, and that room has people in it, and you're trying to figure out what's needed of you, and you understand that there's certain things that you may know that you want to share that could be influential, that could be helpful. The problem that lots of people trip on is they assume that if my words are correct, then it will have the impact that I'm trying to have. And they're frustrated that they don't get it because the words are right. Why are they not listening to me? I don't understand what's taking so long. Why are they not listening to my advice? My words are so brilliant. I've thought them through. I've had the experience. They're even agreeing with me. Or they're not agreeing with me when they should be agreeing with me. Why is it that these words that I'm saying that seems to make total sense right now, why don't they respond to it? It's because you're making a transfer only at one level. But the level that you're making the transfer is not the level in which decisions are being made. Decisions are not made intellectually. They're made emotionally. There's this great research here that I forgot. I have to look it up. Maybe Andy will find it. And if you find this, you're already amazing. Like, this would be insane. But it's super hard. Because I read it, I can't even tell you how many years ago. There's a study done on a guy who had a brain injury. This is an incredible study. We'll find it. This guy got a brain injury, and in the brain injury, he impaired the part of the brain that impacts emotionality, that impacts feelings. And he came out of whatever the injury is, came out of the hospital, went back to life. And no one really understood. And everything was the same except for his life started to fall apart. And no one knew why. And he went to the doctor and they're like, your brain seems fine. I mean, you have a little bit of it, but you can process data, you can remember things. There's no real intellectual impairment to your brain. And his life fell apart. The relationships fell apart. Everything just fell apart. So he went to this one, I think a psychologist, and they did more scans. And what they realized was that the part of the brain that got impaired was the part that was connected to emotionality. I'll look this up. Incredible. What they realized was that, oh, I think he got it. Oh my gosh, Andy, you got to be kidding me. I think he got it. For those who are on the chat, I think he got it. I'm going to look that up later. We'll make sure it's the right one. And what they found was that intellectually, the person had all the information, but he couldn't make a decision because decision-making is emotional. Decision-making is at a place that is deeper than intellectualism. But it goes even deeper because decision-making really is even spiritual. But when you get to the world of emotionality, it's closer. We're talking about being influential. If we think that the way we become influential is by sharing information, by downloading to computer one, my brain, to computer two, your brain, that's not how it works. An intellectual transfer could ultimately help a decision. An intellectual transfer can encourage the person making a decision to do it in a way that aligns once the decision is being made. But it can't influence in any real deep way. Intellectual transfer is not when things happen. Things happen when there's an energy transfer. Things happen when there's an emotional transfer. Things happen when people feel something from the energy that is in the garment called words that are being transferred to you. When I take my thoughts and myself and I package them in words and I say them over to you and you hear them, but what's taking place is as you unpack the words, what's happening is you are unpacking an energy that I put into the words, and that energy is making a difference in your soul. This is one of the greatest adages in the Torah that says, Hadvarim hayotzim min halev, the things that come out of one's heart, nichnasim lalev, they enter into the other person's heart. Well, how does that work? I don't just sit with my heart across from your heart and we just sort of like transfer. I feel them in my heart and I say them in my mouth. And as you hear them in your ears, you digest them into your heart and something is different. That's where influence takes place. It takes place when your intentionality is aligned. It takes place then when you look at the people around you and you realize how amazing they are. You realize how little you know about them. You realize how powerful people are and how all of us have a bit of divineness in us, as however evil, however wrong, or however disagreeable the person is in front of you, they too have a piece of the divine. And what you really want is to just share something so much deeper than your words with them. When the intentionality behind the words is strong, then the person who hears it has a different feeling. You're not putting your USB into your head and transferring it over to their file cabinet. You're taking a piece of your energy, of your spirituality, and you are aligning it with theirs. And so what's happening is you're plugging into the same outlet. And that feeling and that trust and that transfer is so much greater. That's how we make a difference in this world. Being right doesn't really matter if the person in front of you can't hear it. And unfortunately, for those who are living in this world, there are a lot of people who think, oh, I just got to yell louder. That's how to do it. And it doesn't work. Maybe there's a few of us that realize that the yelling just I don't mean yelling, just yelling. You know what I mean? You can yell by being just passive aggressive, upset. You know that? Fine. No, I'll do it. I'll just do it. I'll just do it. It's fine. Leave it for me. I'll just do it. I'll handle it. I'll handle it. I'll handle it. You know that? We'll talk more about how I grew up in that world. That's called law. That's called corporate law. That's corporate American corporate law. Passive aggressive disappointment. All right, let's try this today. Take anything you're saying with someone else today. Just try this once today. Okay, just for the note, I got a great line. American corporate law sounds a bit like a Jewish mother. I love that. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. I have to continue that conversation. We got to talk about Jewish moms at some point. That's great. All right, let's think about this today. When you're speaking to somebody today, I want you to try for a second, once. As you're talking, question yourself. After you're done, just walk away and go, what was my intentionality in that words? Was it to build them, or was it to fight them? Let's think about this. We'll build, we'll develop with God's help together. Thanks so much for joining us. Have an incredible day. And with God's help, I cannot wait to see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.